The shrill train whistle cut through the autumn air, startling Sophia Holloway from her troubled thoughts as she clutched her worn leather suitcase tighter. The year was 1878, and she was fleeing the only life she'd ever known, her heart pounding with both fear and exhilaration as the massive iron locomotive hissed to a stop at the dusty platform of Silver Creek, Arizona Territory. Sophia's chestnut hair was pinned neatly beneath a modest bonnet, her emerald eyes scanning the bustling platform with apprehension. At 22, she had never traveled alone before, but circumstances had changed everything. The letter from her late aunt's solicitor had arrived 3 weeks ago, informing her of an inheritance, a small parcel of land, and a modest cabin in the frontier town of Redemption Springs. It was her only chance at a fresh start after the scandal that had ruined her reputation in Boston. "All aboard for Redemption Springs," the conductor called, his voice carrying over the din of the crowded station. Sophia gathered her skirts and moved toward the passenger car, struggling with her heavy suitcase. The conductor, a stout man with a salt and pepper mustache and kind eyes, reached for her ticket. "Traveling alone, miss?" he asked, his tone carrying a note of concern that was common when women ventured into the Western Territories unaccompanied. Before Sophia could respond, a deep voice answered from behind her, "For now she ain't." Sophia whirled around to find herself face to face with the tallest man she'd ever seen. His broad shoulders were draped in a worn duster coat, and a Stetson hat cast shadows across piercing blue eyes. A star-shaped badge glinted on his chest. "Marshal Isaac Westfield, madam," he said, tipping his hat. "I'll be escorting the lady to Redemption Springs, sheriff's business." The conductor nodded, seemingly relieved, and punched their tickets. "Car 3 has some empty seats, best hurry now." Sophia stared at the stranger with confusion and indignation. "I beg your pardon, Marshal, but I don't recall requesting an escort." A hint of a smile played at the corner of his mouth as he effortlessly took her suitcase. "You didn't. But these tracks have been targeted by the Hawkins gang 3 times in the past month. The sheriff asked me to ensure all female passengers reach Redemption Springs safely." "I assure you I can take care of myself," Sophia protested, though she made no move to reclaim her luggage as they boarded the train. "I don't doubt that, miss." "Holloway, Sophia Holloway." "Well, Miss Holloway, consider me nothing more than a traveling companion for the journey ahead." Marshal Westfield guided her to a seat by the window. "Besides, I suspect you might appreciate some friendly conversation during the 8-hour ride." As the train lurched forward with a series of metallic groans, Sophia found herself studying the marshal. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with sun-weathered skin and a strong jawline partially obscured by a neatly trimmed beard. His hands were calloused, marking him as a man accustomed to hard work despite his position of authority. "What brings you to Redemption Springs, Miss Holloway?" he asked, settling into the seat opposite her. Sophia hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "My aunt passed away recently. She left me a property there." "My condolences," he replied. "Would that be Martha Holloway's place?" The small homestead north of town, surprise flashed across Sophia's face. "Yes, did you know her?" Everyone in Redemption Springs knew Martha. Fine woman, excellent shot, kept to herself mostly, but always helped neighbors in need. He paused, studying her face. "You favor her around the eyes." The train picked up speed, the rhythmic clacking of wheels on rails filling the silence between them. Outside the window, the landscape transformed from the scrubby outskirts of Silver Creek to vast, open desert punctuated by towering red rock formations. "I never met her," Sophia admitted. "My father and she had a falling out before I was born. Family disagreements can be complicated," Marshal Westfield nodded. "That they can. Redemption Springs has a way of giving folks a second chance, though. It's a fitting name for our little town." "I could use a second chance," Sophia murmured, almost to herself. The marshal's keen eyes caught her expression. "Trouble back east," Sophia stiffened. "Nothing worth discussing with a stranger, Marshal." "Fair enough," he conceded with a slight nod. "Though I should mention that in a town the size of Redemption Springs, We don't stay strangers for long." As the train journey continued, Sophia gradually relaxed in the marshal's presence. His conversation was easy, without the pretensions she'd grown accustomed to in Boston society. He spoke of the town, the mercantile run by the widow Chen, the newly built schoolhouse, and the struggles of the ranchers facing a particularly dry season. 2 hours into their journey, the train began to slow unexpectedly. Marshal Westfield tensed, his hand moving instinctively to the revolver at his hip. "Stay here," he instructed, his voice suddenly hard as he rose to his feet. "What's happening?" Sophia asked, anxiety rising within her. "Probably nothing," he replied, though his expression suggested otherwise. "Train sometimes stops for debris on the tracks. I'm going to check with the conductor." No sooner had he stepped into the corridor than the train jerked to a complete halt, sending several passengers stumbling. From outside came shouting, followed by a gunshot that sent Sophia's heart racing. Several women screamed and a child began to wail. Marshal Westfield reappeared, his expression grim. "The Hawkins gang," he said quietly. "5 riders, they're demanding valuables." Sophia's blood ran cold. "What are we going to do?" "You're going to stay down and out of sight," he instructed, pulling his revolver from its holster. "There are 3 other lawmen on this train. We were expecting trouble, just not this soon." Before she could protest, he was gone, moving swiftly toward the front of the car. Sophia pressed herself against the window, peering out to see dust-covered men on horseback surrounding the train. One man, tall with a red bandana covering the lower half of his face, appeared to be giving orders. Minutes stretched like hours as more shots rang out. Passengers huddled on the floor, some praying, others weeping quietly. Sophia found herself gripping the small locket around her neck, the only keepsake she had from her mother. The door at the end of the car burst open, and a man with wild eyes and a bleeding shoulder stumbled in, brandishing a pistol. "Nobody move," he shouted, his voice shrill with pain and panic. "I need a hostage." His gaze fell on Sophia, perhaps noting her fine clothes despite their travel-worn appearance. "You, get up," instinct told her to comply to avoid provoking the desperate man. Slowly, she rose to her feet, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her. "Please," she began, "there's no need for shut up and come here," the outlaw snarled, grabbing her arm roughly when she reached him. He dragged her toward the door, using her as a shield. The metallic smell of blood from his wounded shoulder made her stomach turn, but she forced herself to remain calm. Outside, the situation had clearly turned against the bandits. 2 lay motionless on the ground, while the others were engaged in gunfire with what appeared to be the lawman Marshal Westfield had mentioned. "I got a hostage," her captor shouted, pressing his gun to her temple. "Back off or she dies." The gunfire ceased immediately. Sophia's eyes frantically searched for Marshal Westfield, finally locating him behind an overturned supply crate, his gun trained in their direction. "Let her go, Hawkins," the marshal called out, his voice steady. "You know how this ends." "Not today, Marshal," the outlaw spat. "I'm riding out of here, and she's coming with me until I'm clear." Sophia's mind raced. This man, apparently one of the notorious Hawkins brothers themselves, was desperate and wounded. The chances of him releasing her once they were away from the train were slim. With a courage she didn't know she possessed, Sophia went limp in his grasp, dropping her weight suddenly. The unexpected move caused him to stumble, loosening his grip on both her and his weapon. In the split second of confusion, she drove her elbow back hard into his wounded shoulder. The outlaw howled in pain, and Sophia tore herself from his grasp, diving to the ground as a shot rang out. For a terrifying moment, she thought she'd been hit, but then realized the bullet had come from Marshal Westfield's gun. Her captor collapsed behind her with a groan. Strong hands pulled her to safety behind the crate as the remaining bandits, seeing their advantage lost, retreated in a cloud of dust and gunfire. "Are you hurt?" Marshal Westfield demanded, his eyes scanning her for injuries even as he kept his gun ready. "No, I don't think so," Sophia managed, her entire body trembling with the aftermath of fear and adrenaline. "That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever seen a lady do," he said, his stern expression softening slightly, "but it likely saved your life." "It wasn't courage," she admitted, her voice shaking, "just fear and instinct." "Sometimes that's all courage is," he replied, helping her to her feet once the danger had passed. The aftermath of the attempted robbery was chaotic but efficient. The wounded outlaws were taken into custody, the dead respectfully covered. Passengers were checked for injuries, and the conductor announced they would resume their journey as soon as the engineers confirmed the train was undamaged. Sophia sat quietly in her seat, a blanket around her shoulders provided by a concerned fellow passenger. Marshal Westfield returned after helping secure the prisoners in the baggage car. "You're sure you're all right?" he asked, sitting beside her this time rather than across from her. "Yes," she nodded, though her hands still trembled slightly. "I've never experienced anything like that before." "Most people haven't," he said, "and shouldn't have to." He paused, seeming to debate his next words. "Miss Holloway, I should tell you that Redemption Springs isn't always as eventful as today's journey might suggest, but it is the frontier. Life here can be unpredictable." "I'm beginning to understand that," she replied with a weak smile. "Perhaps I was naive to think I could simply arrive and start anew without any complications. Why did you leave Boston?" He asked directly, his blue eyes studying her face. Sophia looked away, gazing out the window at the passing landscape. The train had resumed its journey, the rhythmic clacking somehow comforting now. "I was engaged," she said finally, "to a man from a prominent family. It was arranged by my father, who thought the match would secure his business interests." She took a deep breath. "2 weeks before the wedding, I discovered my fiancé had inappropriate relationships with several young women working in his family's textile mill." Marshal Westfield's expression darkened. "And when you confronted him?" "I ended the engagement immediately. His family was furious. They claimed I was spreading malicious lies to cover the fact that I had changed my mind. My father—" She hesitated, the pain still fresh. "My father chose to believe them rather than me. He gave me an ultimatum: go through with the wedding or be disowned." "So you left," the marshal concluded. "So I left," she confirmed. "The timing of my aunt's letter seemed providential. A chance to escape and start fresh where no one knew me or my so-called disgrace." Marshal Westfield was quiet for a long moment. "For what it's worth, Miss Holloway, I believe you made the right choice. A man who would take advantage of those under his authority is no man at all." His simple statement of support meant more than Sophia could express. For weeks, she had carried the weight of her decision alone, questioning if she had been too hasty, too prideful. To have someone, even a stranger, validate her choice brought unexpected comfort. "Thank you, Marshal," she said softly. "Isaac," he corrected her. "After what we've been through today, I think we can dispense with formalities." "Isaac," she repeated, testing the name, "and I'm Sophia." The remainder of the journey passed more peacefully. As the sun began to set, casting the landscape in golden light, Sophia found herself sharing more about her life in Boston, her love of literature, her volunteer work at the orphanage, her dreams of one day perhaps becoming a teacher. Isaac, in turn, told her about his journey west after the Civil War, his years as a Texas Ranger before settling in Arizona Territory, and his hope to bring law and stability to the frontier communities. "Redemption Springs has good people," he explained. "Hard-working folks trying to build something that lasts. We've got our share of troublemakers, but the town's growing. The railroad connection last year has made a real difference." As the train chugged through a mountain pass, the setting sun illuminated a valley below with a scattering of buildings nestled alongside a winding river. "There it is," Isaac said, nodding toward the window. "Redemption Springs." Sophia leaned forward, taking in her first glimpse of her new home. It was smaller than she had imagined, perhaps 40 or 50 buildings arranged along a main street, with homesteads dotting the surrounding countryside. A church steeple rose prominently, and she could make out corrals with horses at the edge of town. "It's beautiful," she murmured, surprised to find she meant it. There was something appealing about the town's modest size and picturesque setting. "It grows on you," Isaac agreed with a hint of pride in his voice. The train slowed as it approached the station, a simple wooden platform with a small building. A handful of people waited, some clearly eager for arriving passengers, others there for freight or mail. "What will happen to the men you captured?" Sophia asked as they gathered their belongings. "They'll stand trial here," Isaac explained. "Judge Wilson comes through every 2 months. Until then, they'll be guests of our jail." The train lurched to a stop with a hiss of steam and squeal of brakes. Isaac helped Sophia down onto the platform, her suitcase in his other hand. "Marshal Westfield," a young deputy hurried over, "got your telegram about the trouble. Sheriff wants a full report." "Tell him I'll be there shortly, Jennings," Isaac responded, then turned to Sophia. "Let me see you settled first." "That's not necessary," Sophia protested, though not as firmly as she might have earlier in the day. "You have duties to attend to, one of which is ensuring new arrivals reach their destinations safely," he countered. "Martha's place is a mile north of town. It would be dark before you got there on foot." He arranged for her suitcase to be loaded into a wagon, then helped her up onto the seat. The town was coming alive with evening activities as they drove down the main street. Lanterns were being lit outside the saloon, and the smell of cooking food wafted from what appeared to be a small restaurant. People nodded or called greetings to Isaac as they passed. Sophia noticed several curious glances directed her way. "Is there anything I should know about the property?" she asked as they left the town behind, following a well-worn road leading north. "It's modest but well-built," Isaac replied. 10 acres, mostly cleared, small cabin with 2 rooms. There's a good well, and the garden was producing last I knew. Your aunt was independent to the end, refused help from most folks." The road curved around a stand of cottonwood trees, revealing a small homestead nestled against the foothills. In the fading light, Sophia could make out a cabin built of sturdy logs, a barn that had seen better days, and a corral where a single horse raised its head at their approach. "That's Thunder," Isaac explained, nodding toward the chestnut gelding. "Your aunt's horse. Good animal, though a bit headstrong." As they drew closer, Sophia felt a strange mix of emotions. This place, this unfamiliar cabin in a territory she'd never visited, was now her home. It represented both her fresh start and the legacy of a woman she'd never had the chance to know. Isaac brought the wagon to a halt in front of the cabin. "I should warn you, no one's been here since your aunt passed 6 weeks ago. It might need some attention." He helped her down, then reached into his pocket and produced a key. "Sheriff had this for safekeeping until the rightful owner arrived." Sophia took it, surprised by the sudden lump in her throat. "Thank you." The interior of the cabin was simple but clean. A main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace, a wooden table with 2 chairs, and a rocking chair near the hearth. A door led to what Sophia presumed was the bedroom. "It's cozy," she said, taking in her new surroundings. Isaac moved to light a lantern that hung near the door. "There's firewood stacked out back, and the pantry should have some basics. Martha was always prepared." As the lantern cast its warm glow around the room, Sophia noticed small touches that spoke of her aunt's character: a bookshelf filled with well-worn volumes, a colorful quilt draped over the rocking chair, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling beams. "I'll need to make a list of supplies," she murmured, more to herself than to Isaac. "Chen's Mercantile in town can provide most of what you'll need," he said. "Mrs. Chen extends credit to those she deems trustworthy, and being Martha's niece will count in your favor." He moved toward the door. "I should be getting back to town. There's a lot to sort out after today's excitement." "Of course," Sophia nodded, suddenly aware of how alone she would be once he left. "Thank you for everything, Marshal Isaac. I'm not sure what would have happened today without your presence." He studied her face for a moment. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Sophia Holloway, but still, I'll ride by tomorrow to check on you if that's agreeable." "I would appreciate that," she admitted. With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Sophia alone with her thoughts and the quiet creaking of the unfamiliar cabin around her. Sleep came fitfully that first night, despite her exhaustion. The unfamiliar sounds of the frontier coyotes howling in the distance, the wind whistling through the eaves, the occasional rustling from the barn where thunder was stabled kept startling her awake. By morning, she was bleary-eyed but determined to begin organizing her new life. The water from the well was cold and sweet. She heated some on the stove for washing, then explored the small garden, finding late-season vegetables that would provide at least a few meals. The pantry, as Isaac had mentioned, contained basic staples: flour, sugar, coffee, and jars of preserved fruits and vegetables. She had just finished feeding Thunder and was contemplating the walk into town when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Through the open doorway, she saw Isaac dismounting from a handsome black stallion. "Good morning," he called, leading his horse to the water trough. "Thought you might need a ride into town." Sophia stepped outside, smoothing her skirt self-consciously. She had managed to wash and change into a simple blue dress, but was acutely aware of her appearance after the difficult night. "That's very thoughtful of you," she replied. "I was just considering the walk. It's no trouble. I need to check on our prisoners and file my report anyway." He paused, studying her face. "Rough night, is it that obvious?" she asked with a rueful smile. "Frontier nights take some getting used to," he acknowledged. "It gets easier." They rode double on his horse, an arrangement that initially made Sophia uncomfortably aware of Isaac's proximity. By the time they reached town, however, she had relaxed enough to enjoy the scenery along the way. Redemption Springs looked different in the morning light, more vibrant and bustling than it had appeared the previous evening. The main street was lined with businesses: the mercantile, a bank, the sheriff's office, a doctor's office, the saloon, and various other establishments. People moved with purpose, nodding greetings to each other as they went about their day. Isaac deposited Sophia at Chen's mercantile with a promise to return in 2 hours. "Mrs. Chen can help you with whatever you need. Just mention you're Martha's niece." The mercantile was a treasure trove of necessities and luxuries alike. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, stocked with everything from tools and household goods to fabrics and foodstuffs. Behind the counter stood a petite Chinese woman with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a neat bun. "You must be Martha's niece," she said as Sophia approached. "Word travels fast in Redemption Springs. I am Lin Chen." "Sophia Holloway," she introduced herself. "I'm in need of some supplies to get settled." Mrs. Chen's efficient manner put Sophia at ease. Together, they compiled a list of essentials: cooking supplies, cleaning materials, additional linens, and foodstuffs. "Martha had an account here," Mrs. Chen explained. "There is still credit available that is now yours. She always paid promptly when she sold her herbs and remedies." "Remedies?" Sophia questioned. "Your aunt was known for her medicinal knowledge," the shopkeeper explained. "People came from miles around for her tinctures and salves." "Did no one tell you?" Sophia shook her head, fascinated by this new information about her mysterious relative. "There is a journal, Mrs. Chen continued. "Martha showed it to me once, all her remedies recorded in detail. You should look for it in the cabin." As Sophia completed her shopping, other townspeople introduced themselves, each seeming to have a story about her aunt. The baker, Mr. Schmidt, spoke of Martha's talent for wild berry pies. The blacksmith mentioned her horse's distinctive shoes that she had specially designed. By the time Isaac returned, Sophia's head was swimming with these glimpses into her aunt's life. "Ready?" he asked, noting the substantial pile of goods on the counter. "We'll need to borrow a wagon for all this." "I can have it delivered this afternoon," Mrs. Chen offered. "My son makes deliveries after school." With the arrangements made, Isaac suggested they get something to eat at Molly's cafe before returning to the homestead. "I need to introduce you to a few people anyway," he explained as they walked down the street. "The sheriff, for one. And Doc Adams should know there's someone living at Martha's place again, in case of emergencies." Molly's cafe was a cozy establishment with checkered tablecloths and delicious aromas wafting from the kitchen. Several diners greeted Isaac warmly as they entered, their curious gazes moving to Sophia. "Marshal Westfield, your usual table?" a plump, red-haired woman called from behind the counter. "Thanks, Molly," Isaac replied, leading Sophia to a corner table near the window. This is Miss Sophia Holloway, Martha's niece. She's taken up residence at the homestead. Welcome to Redemption Springs, honey, Molly said warmly. Your aunt was a good woman. We miss her something fierce. First meals on the house, it's tradition for newcomers. Over a hearty meal of beef stew and fresh bread, Isaac pointed out various townspeople, giving Sophia a brief overview of the community she had joined. Sheriff Davis over there, the older gentleman with the gray mustache. Tough but fair. Been sheriff here since the town was founded 12 years ago. I've been his deputy for 5 years now, though he's talking about retiring and handing over the badge to me. Is that what you want? Sophia asked, genuinely interested. Isaac considered the question. I like bringing order to chaos, he said finally, and I believe in this town what it could become, so yes, I suppose it is. Their conversation was interrupted when a young woman approached their table, her expression anxious. Marshal Westfield, I hate to disturb your meal, but Billy's at it again at the Golden Nugget. Lester sent me to fetch you before it gets out of hand. Isaac sighed, setting down his napkin. Duty calls. I'm sorry, Sophia, can you find your way back to the homestead? Of course, she assured him, though the prospect of the mile-long walk was not entirely appealing. I don't like leaving you go, she insisted. I'm perfectly capable of walking home in daylight. Besides, it will give me a chance to become more familiar with the area. Reluctantly, he departed, leaving Sophia to finish her meal alone. As she was preparing to leave, Sheriff Davis approached her table. Miss Holloway, he said, his voice gruff but not unfriendly, I understand you had quite an introduction to our territory yesterday. It was certainly memorable, she acknowledged. Isaac told me how you handled yourself with Hawkins. Not many city folks would have had the presence of mind to act as you did. The sheriff studied her with keen eyes. Your aunt would have approved. She had a similar spirit. I'm learning she was quite remarkable, Sophia replied. I regret never having the chance to know her. She spoke of you, you know, the sheriff said, surprising her. Kept a letter you wrote her when you were, about 16, I'd guess. Showed it to me once, said her niece had a fine mind and a good heart. Sophia was momentarily speechless. She vaguely remembered writing to her aunt after discovering her address in her father's study, a defiant act of reaching out to the family member her father had forbidden contact with. I didn't know she received it, she said softly. My father discouraged communication. Well, she did, kept it in that Bible of hers. The sheriff straightened. Anyway, just wanted to welcome you proper. Town council meets first Monday of the month if you're interested in community matters. Your aunt rarely attended, but you might feel different. The walk back to the homestead gave Sophia time to process the events of the past 2 days. The territory was nothing like she had imagined, both harsher and more welcoming than she had anticipated. The danger was real, as yesterday's train robbery had demonstrated, but so was the sense of community. At the cabin, she began organizing her new home, placing her few personal belongings alongside her aunt's possessions. In the bedroom, she discovered a cedar chest containing quilts, a few dresses that spoke of her aunt's practical nature, and beneath them, a leather-bound Bible. With trembling fingers, Sophia opened it, finding pressed flowers, notes in her aunt's neat handwriting, and tucked between the pages of Proverbs, a faded letter in Sophia's own girlish script. She sat on the edge of the bed, reading the innocent words of her 16-year-old self, marveling that this tenuous connection to her aunt had been preserved all these years. A knock at the door startled her from her reflections. Outside stood a young Chinese boy of perhaps 12, standing beside a wagon loaded with her purchases from the mercantile. Mr. Y. Chen, at your service, he announced with a formal bow that made Sophia smile. Mother sent me with your goods. Together they unloaded the supplies, Y chattering about school and his family's journey from San Francisco 5 years earlier. His youthful enthusiasm was infectious, and Sophia found herself laughing at his animated descriptions of town events. As evening approached, she felt a sense of accomplishment looking at her now well-stocked pantry and organized living space. The cabin was beginning to feel less like a stranger's home and more like her own. She had just lit the lamps when another knock came at the door. This time it was Isaac, his expression weary but relieved to find her safely home. "Sorry about earlier," he said, accepting her invitation to come in. "Billy Matthews fancies himself a gunslinger when he's in his cups. Had to cool him off in the jail for the afternoon." "No harm done," Sophia assured him, offering him coffee, which he gratefully accepted. "I've had a productive day setting things to rights here. It looks good," he commented, glancing around the cabin. "Feels lived in again." They sat at the small table, the coffee steaming between them as darkness fell outside. Their conversation flowed easily, covering topics from books they had read to Isaac's experiences during the war and his journey west. "I should let you rest," he said finally, rising to his feet. "But I wanted to ask, there's a social at the church this Sunday after services. Might be a good way for you to meet more of the townspeople if you're interested." "I would like that," Sophia replied, surprised by how much the prospect appealed to her. "I could escort you," he offered, his tone deliberately casual, "if you'd like." "I would appreciate that," she said, equally careful to keep her voice neutral despite the flutter in her chest. After he departed, Sophia found herself smiling as she prepared for bed. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt a sense of possibility rather than mere escape. The next few days fell into a pattern. Sophia spent her mornings exploring the homestead, discovering the extent of her property, and taking inventory of what needed repair or attention. The barn needed new shingles in places, and the corral fence required mending, but overall, her aunt had left the property in good condition. In the afternoons, she often ventured into town, gradually meeting more residents and establishing herself as Martha Holloway's niece and the new owner of the North Homestead. She found the herbarium behind the cabin and began examining her aunt's carefully labeled plants and preparations, fascinated by the knowledge preserved there. Isaac made a point of checking on her daily, sometimes bringing news or supplies, other times simply stopping to ensure she was settling in well. Their conversations grew longer and more personal with each visit. By Sunday morning, Sophia felt a nervous anticipation as she dressed for church services in her best dress, a deep green that complemented her eyes. She had arranged her chestnut hair in a simple but elegant style, secured with tortoiseshell combs that had belonged to her mother. Isaac arrived promptly, looking distinctly uncomfortable in a clean black suit and white shirt that replaced his usual practical attire. His eyes widened slightly when Sophia emerged from the cabin. "You look," he began, then seemed to struggle for the right word. "Very nice, Miss Holloway." "Thank you, Marshal," she replied with equal formality, though her lips twitched with suppressed amusement at their sudden return to titles. "You're looking quite presentable yourself." The church was the most substantial building in town, with a white steeple that rose above the other structures. Inside, polished wooden pews faced a simple altar, while colorful glass windows cast rainbow patterns across the worn floorboards. Sophia was conscious of the many eyes upon her as Isaac led her to a pew near the middle of the church. Whispers followed them, which she pretended not to notice. The service was led by Reverend Thomas, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a powerful speaking voice. His sermon on new beginnings and welcoming strangers seemed particularly appropriate, and Sophia found herself genuinely moved by his words. Afterward, the congregation moved to the churchyard where tables had been set up laden with food for the social. Women approached Sophia with introductions and invitations, while men greeted Isaac with good-natured teasing about his new friend. "Don't mind the gossips," murmured a young woman who introduced herself as Rebecca Turner, the schoolteacher. "They mean well, but entertainment is scarce out here. A handsome marshal escorting a beautiful newcomer is the most exciting thing to happen since the Wilkins cow had twin calves." Sophia laughed, appreciating Rebecca's forthright manner. "I suppose I should be flattered to rank above bovine births in local interest." "Only just," Rebecca grinned. "But seriously, we're glad to have you here. The school could use volunteers if you're ever interested." "I understand you have experience with children from your work in Boston." "I would love that," Sophia replied sincerely, As the afternoon progressed, Sophia found herself genuinely enjoying the company of her new neighbors. Their curiosity was tempered with kindness, and their acceptance of her presence seemed sincere. Isaac remained close by, introducing her to those she hadn't yet met and ensuring she was never left standing alone. She noticed how respected he was in the community. People sought his opinion and deferred to his judgment in small disputes that arose. "Your aunt's remedy book," Mrs. Chen said, approaching Sophia as the gathering was winding down. "Did you locate it?" "Not yet," Sophia admitted. "I've found her herbarium and many dried specimens, but no book of instructions." "It would be a shame to lose such knowledge," the shopkeeper mused. "Perhaps I could help you search. Martha and I often work together collecting herbs." "I would appreciate that," Sophia replied, touched by the offer. As Isaac drove her home in the borrowed wagon, the setting sun painting the landscape in gold and crimson, Sophia felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in a long time. "You seem to enjoy yourself," Isaac commented, glancing at her profile. "I did," she acknowledged. "Everyone has been very welcoming." "This is a good community," he said. "People look out for each other here. It's one of the things I love about Redemption Springs." "I can see why," Sophia replied softly. "It feels different from Boston, less concerned with appearances and social standing." "Don't be fooled," Isaac chuckled. "Mrs. Peterson still cares very much who uses the proper fork at her dinner parties." "But yes, out here, a person's worth is measured more by their actions than their pedigree." At the cabin, he helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for today," she said, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "For introducing me to everyone." "My pleasure," he replied, his voice lower than usual. For a moment, Sophia thought he might say more, but instead he stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should get this wagon back to town. Will you be all right?" "Of course," she assured him, trying to ignore the disappointment that fluttered in her chest. As October gave way to November, Sophia found herself increasingly integrated into the life of Redemption Springs. She volunteered at the school 2 mornings a week, helping Rebecca Turner with the younger children. She began experimenting with some of her aunt's simpler herbal preparations, guided by Mrs. Chen, who helped her locate the elusive remedy book hidden in a false bottom of the flour bin, of all places. The more she learned about Martha Holloway, the more Sophia wished she had known her aunt in life. The woman who emerged from townspeople's stories and her own detailed notes was intelligent, independent, and quietly generous with her knowledge and resources. Isaac remained a constant presence, though his duties often kept him busy. The trial of the Hawkins gang members was approaching, bringing additional responsibilities as he prepared testimonies and evidence. Still, he made time to help Sophia with repairs around the homestead and to teach her basic skills she would need for frontier life. "You need to learn to shoot," he insisted one crisp afternoon in mid-November as they finished mending the corral fence. "Living alone out here, it's a necessity, not a luxury." Sophia had never handled a firearm before, but she recognized the wisdom in his concern. The territory still had its dangers, from wild animals to the occasional outlaws who passed through. Isaac proved to be a patient teacher, showing her how to load, aim, and fire the small revolver he had brought for her. "It belonged to your aunt," he explained, placing it in her hands. "Sheriff found it when he came to secure the property after she passed. Seems fitting it should be yours now." Sophia's first attempts at hitting the targets he set up tin cans arranged on fence posts were embarrassingly poor. But Isaac neither laughed nor showed frustration, simply correcting her stance and grip until gradually her aim improved. "Not bad," he commented when she finally struck one of the cans, sending it flying. "Martha would be proud. She was quite the marksman herself." "I find that easier to believe with each day," Sophia replied, lowering the gun. "She seems to have been remarkably self-sufficient." "She was," Isaac agreed, but even she recognized the value of community. She kept to herself, but she never hesitated to help when needed or to ask for help when necessary. As they walked back to the cabin, Sophia considered his words. I've always been rather independent myself, she admitted. Perhaps too much so, according to my father. He thought it an unattractive quality in a woman. Isaac's expression darkened slightly. Your father sounds like a man of rather traditional views. He is, Sophia confirmed. He believes a woman's role is to be ornamental and obedient, first to her father and then to her husband. And what do you believe? Isaac asked, his blue eyes studying her face intently. I believe that women are as capable of thought and action as men, she replied without hesitation. That we deserve the same opportunities for education and meaningful work. That marriage should be a partnership of equals rather than a relationship of ownership. She held her breath, waiting for his reaction. In Boston, such views had been considered radical, even among some who considered themselves progressive. To her surprise, Isaac nodded thoughtfully. My mother raised 5 children alone after my father was killed at Antietam. She ran the farm, negotiated with buyers, and ensured we all received an education. She was the strongest person I've ever known. Relief washed over Sophia. She sounds remarkable. She was, Isaac agreed. She would have liked you, I think. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Sophia found herself wondering what it would mean to have met his mother, to have been introduced as someone significant in his life, rather than merely a newcomer he was assisting. The moment was broken by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. They turned to see the young deputy, Jennings, riding toward them at speed. Marshal, he called, reining in his horse. Telegram from Silver Creek. The last Hawkins brother has been spotted heading this way with a new gang. Sheriff thinks they're coming for the prisoners. Isaac's expression immediately shifted to one of professional concern. When? Could be tonight, could be tomorrow. Sheriff's organizing men to guard the jail and patrol the town. Jennings glanced at Sophia apologetically. Madam, I need to go, Isaac told her, already moving toward his horse. Stay at the cabin tonight. Keep your doors locked and that revolver close. I will, Sophia promised. Please be careful, he paused, turning back to her. For a moment, she thought he might say something more, but instead, he simply nodded before mounting his horse and following Jennings back toward town at a gallop. That night was the longest Sophia had experienced since arriving in Redemption Springs. She paced the cabin, jumping at every sound from outside, the revolver never far from her hand. Sleep eluded her entirely as she imagined various scenarios, each more troubling than the last. Dawn arrived without incident but brought no relief. Sophia completed her morning chores mechanically, her attention constantly drawn to the road leading to town, watching for any sign of Isaac or news. By mid-morning, her nerves couldn't bear the uncertainty any longer. She saddled Thunder, a skill Isaac had insisted she learn, and rode toward town, the revolver secured in her pocket. Redemption Springs was unnaturally quiet. Several businesses remained closed, their shutters drawn tight. Armed men patrolled the streets, nodding grimly to her as she passed. Outside the jail, a larger group had gathered, rifles at the ready. Sophia dismounted in front of the sheriff's office, tying Thunder to the hitching post. Inside, she found Sheriff Davis studying a map spread across his desk. Isaac and several deputies gathered around him. Miss Holloway, the sheriff said, looking up with a frown, you shouldn't be in town today. I needed to know what was happening, she replied, her eyes seeking Isaac's. Has there been any sign of them? Scout reported they're camped about 5 miles south, Isaac answered, his expression tight with concern. 8 men, including Cleet Hawkins. They'll likely move after dark. We're ready for them, Sheriff Davis added, but civilians should stay clear. That includes you, Miss Holloway. I understand, she nodded. Is there anything I can do to help? Perhaps prepare bandages or food for the men standing guard, the sheriff considered her offer. Mrs. Peterson is organizing the women at the church to prepare supplies. You could join them. Isaac pulled her aside as she turned to leave. You should have stayed at the homestead, he said in a low voice. It's safer there. I couldn't bear not knowing, she admitted. Besides, I want to help if I can. His expression softened slightly. Just promise you'll return home before dusk. This is going to get ugly, Sophia. These men have nothing to lose. I promise, she assured him. Touched by his concern at the church, Sophia found a flurry of activity. Women of all ages were preparing bandages, cooking food, and organizing supplies. Mrs. Peterson, a formidable widow in her 60s, immediately put Sophia to work rolling bandages alongside Rebecca Turner. "Any news from the jail?" Rebecca asked in a hushed tone. "They believe the gang will attack tonight," Sophia replied, keeping her voice equally low to avoid alarming the younger girls helping nearby. Rebecca's fingers stilled momentarily. "My brother is one of the deputies," she confided. "He's only 19. Sophia squeezed her hand in silent understanding. Every person in this room had someone they were worried about: husbands, sons, brothers, fathers standing against the coming threat. As afternoon wore on, tension in the town rose palpably. Sophia helped deliver food to the men standing guard, catching only glimpses of Isaac as he moved between positions, checking preparations and offering encouragement. True to her promise, as the sun began its descent, Sophia prepared to return to the homestead. She was saddling Thunder when Isaac appeared at her side. "I'll ride with you," he said, leaving no room for argument. "Make sure you get home safely." They rode in tense silence, the weight of the coming confrontation heavy between them. At the cabin, Isaac dismounted to check the property, ensuring all was secure before returning to where Sophia waited by the door. "Bar the door behind me," he instructed. "Don't open it for anyone until morning, no matter what you hear." "Isaac," she began, her voice catching, "please take care." In the fading light, his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Sophia, he started, then stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Instead, he reached for her hand, raising it to his lips in a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and deeply sincere. "I'll return tomorrow." She watched him ride away, his figure silhouetted against the sunset, until he disappeared from view. Only then did she enter the cabin, securing the door as instructed and moving to extinguish all lamps to avoid creating a visible target. In the darkness, she waited, the revolver on the table beside her, straining to hear any sound from the direction of town. Eventually, distant gunfire confirmed her fears the attack had begun. Sophia sat rigid in her chair, every shot making her flinch as she imagined what might be happening in town. Were the defenders holding their ground? Was Isaac safe? What of young Deputy Jennings and Rebecca's brother? The hours crawled by, marked only by occasional bursts of gunfire that eventually subsided completely. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the sounds of conflict, offering no clues as to the outcome. Dawn found Sophia still at her post, exhausted but unable to rest until she knew what had transpired. As soon as there was enough light to see the road clearly, she moved to the window, watching for any approach. Mid-morning brought the sound of hoofbeats, and Sophia's heart leaped to her throat as she peered out to see a single rider approaching slowly. Even at a distance, she recognized Isaac's broad-shouldered silhouette. Relief flooded through her until she noticed his slumped posture. Something was wrong. She rushed outside, propriety forgotten as she ran to meet him. Isaac's face was drawn with exhaustion, a blood-stained bandage visible on his upper arm where his sleeve had been cut away. He dismounted stiffly, wincing as his boots hit the ground. "You're hurt," Sophia exclaimed, moving to support him. "It's nothing, just a graze," he assured her, though he didn't refuse her assistance as she helped him into the cabin. "What happened? Is everyone all right?" she asked, guiding him to a chair before hurrying to heat water. "We were ready for them," Isaac replied wearily. "Ambushed them as they approached the jail. Cleet Hawkins and 3 others are dead, the rest are in custody. And our side, were there losses?" Sophia asked, dreading the answer. Isaac's expression grew somber. "2 men wounded besides me. And we lost Deputy Miller. He leaves a wife and infant son." Sophia closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the news. "I'm so sorry." "He knew the risks," Isaac said quietly. "We all do. It's part of wearing the badge." She gathered clean cloths and her aunt's healing salve, gently helping him remove his torn shirt to properly clean the wound. The bullet had indeed only grazed his arm, but the gash was long and angry looking. This should be stitched, she murmured, examining it closely. Doc Adams had his hands full with more serious injuries, Isaac explained. Said to keep it clean and come see him tomorrow. I can stitch it, Sophia offered. I learned basic medical care while volunteering at the orphanage. Many of the children came to us injured or ill. Isaac studied her face for a moment, then nodded. I trust you. The simple statement warmed her more than it should have. She worked efficiently, first cleaning the wound thoroughly, then applying her aunt's numbing salve before beginning the delicate process of stitching the edges together. Isaac remained stoically silent throughout, though she knew it must be painful. There, she said finally, tying off the last stitch and applying a clean bandage. It will leave a scar, but it should heal well if you keep it clean. Another scar won't make much difference, he replied with a ghost of a smile, gesturing to the collection of old wounds visible on his torso. Sophia's eyes traced the map of scars, some clearly from bullets, others from knives or other injuries. Each one represented a moment when his life had been in danger, a risk taken in service to others. You should rest, she said, suddenly conscious of his bare chest and their proximity. You look exhausted. I should get back to town, he protested, though without much conviction. There's still much to do. The town can manage without you for a few hours, she insisted, her tone brooking no argument. You'll be of no use to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. To her surprise, he yielded without further protest, allowing her to help him to the small sofa near the fireplace. She covered him with a blanket, and before she had even stepped away, his eyes had closed, his breathing settling into the rhythm of sleep. Sophia moved quietly about the cabin, preparing a simple stew that would be ready when he woke. Occasionally, she glanced at his sleeping form, struck by how different he looked in repose. The lines of responsibility and vigilance softened, making him appear younger. It was nearly evening when he finally stirred, sitting up with a grimace as the movement pulled at his injury. How long was I asleep? He asked, his voice rough with sleep. Most of the day, she replied, bringing him a cup of coffee. You needed it. I should have returned to town, he began, but she cut him off. I sent word with Mr. Schmidt when he passed by earlier. The sheriff knows you're here recovering. She set a bowl of stew before him. You need to eat, then you can worry about your duties. Isaac looked at her with a mixture of surprise and something warmer that made her cheeks flush. You're quite formidable when you take charge, Sophia Holloway. So I've been told, she replied lightly, joining him at the table with her own bowl. My father considered it my least attractive quality. Your father was wrong about many things, it seems, Isaac said quietly. They ate in companionable silence, the events of the previous night creating a strange intimacy between them. When Isaac finally prepared to leave, darkness had fallen once more. You could stay, Sophia offered impulsively. The sofa isn't comfortable for a full night, but it's better than riding back to town in the dark when you're injured. Isaac hesitated, clearly torn between propriety and practicality. People would talk, he said finally. People already talk, she countered. From the moment you escorted me from the train, what's one more night of gossip if it means you don't reopen that wound riding in the dark? His reluctant smile told her she had won the argument. You make a compelling case, Miss Holloway. That night marked a subtle but significant shift in their relationship. Though nothing improper occurred, Sophia insisted he take the bed while she used the sofa. Overriding his protests, the simple act of sharing the small cabin through the night created a domestic intimacy neither had anticipated. In the morning, they shared breakfast before Isaac finally returned to town, promising to send word about the funerary arrangements for Deputy Miller. The following days were somber as the town mourned its loss. Sophia attended the funeral alongside the entire community, watching as Isaac and the other lawmen carried their fallen comrade to his final rest. The sight of Deputy Miller's young widow cradling her infant son brought tears to Sophia's eyes, a poignant reminder of the real cost of frontier justice. After the service, Isaac found her at the edge of the gathering. Will you walk with me? He asked quietly. They strolled away from the cemetery in silence until they reached a small ridge overlooking the town. Isaac seemed lost in thought, his expression troubled. Are you all right? Sophia finally asked, touching his arm gently. I've been thinking about Miller, he admitted. About the risks we take every day, about what we sacrifice for this badge. He turned to face her directly, and about what we might be asking others to sacrifice for us. Sophia understood his meaning immediately. You mean the families left behind? Yes. His blue eyes were intense as they held hers. I've never let myself consider it before what it might mean to have someone waiting for me, worrying whether it would be fair to ask that of anyone. Her heart beat faster at the implication of his words. Shouldn't that be their choice? She asked softly. To decide what risks they are willing to accept, perhaps, he conceded, but it would need to be a fully informed choice. I think anyone who cared for you would understand the nature of your work, Sophia said carefully. The dangers, yes, but also the importance of what you do. Isaac studied her face for a long moment. Sophia, he began, then stopped as someone called his name from the direction of town. Deputy Jennings was hurrying toward them, waving urgently. Marshal, telegram from the territorial governor. It's important. The moment broken, Isaac's expression shifted back to professional concern. We'll continue this conversation another time, he promised, before turning to attend to his duties. December arrived with unseasonably cold weather. Snow dusted the mountains visible from Sophia's homestead, and frost painted delicate patterns on her windows each morning. The town prepared for Christmas with simple decorations and plans for a community celebration at the church. Sophia found herself fully embraced by the community now. Women invited her to quilting circles and baking days. Her knowledge of herbs, expanded by her aunt's careful notes, made her a valued resource for treating winter ailments. Even the gruff sheriff had taken to stopping by the homestead occasionally to check on her, though Sophia suspected Isaac had requested this vigilance. Isaac himself had been unusually busy. The telegram had contained orders to escort the remaining Hawkins gang members to the territorial capital for a higher court trial, a journey that had taken him away from Redemption Springs for nearly 2 weeks. In his absence, Sophia was surprised by how keenly she felt the loss of his company. Their interrupted conversation at the funeral lingered in her mind, along with the question of what he had been about to say before Jennings interrupted them. When Isaac finally returned, winter had settled firmly over the territory. He appeared at her door one evening as snow began to fall, his coat dusted with white flakes. "You're back," Sophia said unnecessarily, unable to hide her pleasure at seeing him again. "Just rode in," he confirmed, stomping snow from his boots as he entered the warm cabin. "Wanted to check on you before reporting to the sheriff." "I've been perfectly fine," she assured him, taking his coat and hanging it near the fire to dry. "Though I'll admit the homestead has seemed quieter without your daily visits." Something in her tone must have caught his attention, for he turned to study her face. "Did you miss me, Sophia Holloway?" he asked, his voice lighter than usual. "Perhaps a little," she admitted, busying herself with pouring coffee to hide the color rising in her cheeks. "Only a little," he pressed, accepting the cup she offered. "That's disappointing. I missed you considerably more than a little." Sophia looked up, startled by his forthright admission. "Did you?" "Very much," he confirmed, his blue eyes holding hers. "In fact, I had a great deal of time to think during the journey, about Redemption Springs, about my future here, about you." Her heart seemed to skip a beat. "And what conclusions did you reach?" "That I've been a coward," he said simply. "Hiding behind my badge and duties to avoid pursuing what I truly want." "And what is that?" Sophia asked, barely breathing. "You," Isaac replied, setting down his coffee cup and moving closer to her. "If you'll have me." Time seemed to suspend as they stood facing each other, the crackling fire and soft patter of snow against the windows the only sounds in the cabin. "Isaac," Sophia began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you certain?" "You spoke at the funeral about the sacrifices. I know the risks," he interrupted gently. "But these past 2 weeks showed me clearly that a life without you in it would be a poorer one, regardless of those risks." He took her hands in his touch warm and steady. "I'm not a wealthy man, Sophia. I can't offer you the luxuries you knew in Boston, but I can promise to love you honestly and completely for as long as I live." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes as the full meaning of his words registered. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "Not very well, apparently," Isaac said with a rueful smile. "Let me try again." To her astonishment, he lowered himself to one knee before her, still holding her hands in his. "Sophia Holloway, I love you. I think I've loved you since the moment you faced down Hawkins on that train, showing more courage than many men I've known. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Joy bubbled up within her, bright and unstoppable. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." His face lit with such happiness that it took her breath away. He rose to his feet, drawing her into his arms with gentle reverence. Their first kiss was tender, a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally separated, both smiling like fools, Isaac reached into his pocket and produced a small silver ring. "It was my mother's," he explained. "I've carried it with me since she passed, waiting for the right woman to give it to." The simple band fit perfectly on Sophia's finger, its polished surface gleaming in the firelight. "It's beautiful," she whispered, overcome with emotion. "So are you," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers. "And I am the luckiest man in the Arizona Territory." News of their engagement spread through Redemption Springs with remarkable speed, met with universal approval and more than a few comments about how long the courtship had taken. "About time," Sheriff Davis grumbled when they informed him officially the next day. "Thought I might have to lock you two in a cell together to make you see sense." The weeks leading up to Christmas were filled with preparations not just for the holiday, but for their wedding, which they had decided to hold on New Year's Day, 1879. "A fresh start for a new year," Sophia had suggested, and Isaac readily agreed. On Christmas Eve, the entire town gathered at the church for carols and celebration. Sophia, standing beside her fiancé as the community sang by candlelight, felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced in Boston. These people, from the stern sheriff to the chattering schoolchildren, had become her family in just a few short months. Isaac seemed to sense her thoughts, squeezing her hand gently as they shared a hymnal. Later, as they walked back to the homestead through gently falling snow, he spoke of their future. "I've been thinking about living arrangements," he said. "This cabin is yours by right, but it's rather far from town for a marshal's residence." "I've been considering that as well," Sophia admitted. "I love this place, but I understand your need to be closer to your duties." "Actually," Isaac said, helping her over a snow-covered log, "I was thinking we might do both. Keep the homestead as a place to retreat from town when we need peace, but also have a home in Redemption Springs itself." "That sounds perfect," Sophia agreed, delighted by the thoughtfulness of his plan. "I wouldn't want to give up my aunt's garden or her remedies. People have come to rely on them." "Just as they rely on you," Isaac said warmly. "You've become an essential part of this community, Sophia. Your knowledge and compassion have touched many lives, as have yours," she returned. "I've seen how people respect and trust you, how they look to you for protection and guidance." At the cabin, they lingered on the porch, reluctant to part despite the cold. Tomorrow they would exchange their modest Christmas gifts, but tonight was for savoring the quiet joy of their engagement. "1 week until you're Mrs. Westfield," Isaac murmured, drawing her close. "Mrs. Sophia Westfield," she repeated, testing the sound of it. "I rather like that." "So do I," he agreed, his voice deepening as he bent to kiss her. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a flurry of activity. The entire town seemed involved in wedding preparations. Mrs. Peterson organized a group of women to decorate the church with evergreen boughs and winter berries. Molly from the cafe insisted on baking the wedding cake. Sheriff Davis, to everyone's surprise, revealed a talent for carpentry and presented the couple with a hand-crafted bedroom set. On New Year's Eve, Rebecca Turner hosted a small gathering for Sophia, a ladies' celebration the night before the wedding. They shared advice, stories, and more than a few glasses of sweet wine, sending Sophia back to her cabin with flushed cheeks and happy anticipation for the day to come. The first dawn of 1879 broke clear and cold over Redemption Springs. Sophia woke early, watching the sunrise from her window and reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this day. 6 months ago, she had been a disgraced society woman fleeing scandal in Boston. Today, she would marry a man of honor and courage, surrounded by a community that had embraced her as their own. Rebecca arrived mid-morning to help her prepare, bringing Mrs. Chen, who carried a box containing something wrapped in tissue paper. "This was your aunt's, Mrs." Chen explained, carefully removing a wedding dress of cream-colored satin, simple but elegant with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. "She saved it all these years, though she never married. I think she would want you to wear it." Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she touched the fabric. "It's beautiful. Are you certain she would have wanted me to have it?" "She told me once that she kept it for the daughter she never had," Mrs. Chen replied softly. "You are the closest thing to that daughter." The dress fit as if it had been made for her. Rebecca arranged Sophia's chestnut hair in an elegant style adorned with winter flowers, and Mrs. Chen fastened a simple pearl pendant around her neck, another of her aunt's treasures. "Martha would be proud," Mrs. Chen said, stepping back to survey their work. "You honor her memory today." The church was filled to capacity when Sophia arrived, escorted by Sheriff Davis, who had offered to give her away. Music from the church's small organ filled the air as she walked down the aisle, her eyes fixed on Isaac, who waited for her at the altar. He looked magnificent in a new black suit, his normally tousled hair neatly combed, his blue eyes shining with love and pride as she approached. When the sheriff placed her hand in Isaac's, the connection between them felt electric, a tangible bond that transcended the ceremony itself. Reverend Thomas spoke eloquently of love, commitment, and building a life together on the frontier. "These lands test us," he said, looking out over the congregation. "They demand strength, resilience, and courage, but they also reward us with freedom, beauty, and community. Isaac and Sophia have demonstrated all these qualities individually. Together, they will be a formidable force for good in our town." Their vows were simple but heartfelt, spoken clearly for all to hear. When Isaac placed his mother's ring on her finger, now accompanied by a simple gold wedding band, Sophia felt the weight of history and promise it carried. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thomas declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Isaac's kiss was reverent yet passionate, drawing good-natured cheers from the assembled townspeople. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors as Mr. and Mrs. Westfield for the first time, Sophia's heart felt full to bursting with joy and gratitude. The celebration that followed at the town hall lasted well into the evening. There was dancing, feasting, and toasts to the new couple's health and happiness. As twilight fell, Isaac drew Sophia aside to a quiet corner. "Happy?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Completely," she assured him, resting her hands on his chest. "Though I'm beginning to think we might make our escape soon. Mrs. Peterson has had rather too much punch and is starting to tell stories that make even the sheriff blush." Isaac laughed, the sound warming her heart. "Then perhaps it's time I took my wife home." Home was the homestead for now, though they had purchased a small house in town that would be ready for them in a few weeks. Isaac had arranged for the cabin to be prepared for their wedding night, with fresh linens, flowers despite the winter season, and a roaring fire to ward off the January chill. He insisted on carrying her across the threshold, setting her down gently in the center of the room that looked both familiar and somehow new in the soft glow of lantern light. "Welcome home, Mrs. Westfield," he said softly, removing his hat and coat. "That still sounds strange," Sophia admitted with a smile, "but wonderful." "I have something for you," Isaac said, retrieving a small package from his pocket. A wedding gift. Inside the brown paper was a small leather-bound journal, its pages blank and waiting. "I noticed you reading your aunt's remedy book and thought you might like to start your own," he explained, "for your own discoveries and knowledge to pass down someday." The thoughtfulness of the gift touched her deeply. "It's perfect," she whispered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Thank you." Their first night as husband and wife was a tender exploration, both nervous yet eager to express physically the love that had grown between them over the past months. Isaac was gentle and patient, his touch awakening sensations Sophia had never imagined. In his arms, she found both passion and safety, a combination that left her breathless with wonder. Afterward, as they lay entwined beneath the quilts, watching the fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, Isaac traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "You remember that day on the train?" he asked. "When the conductor asked if you were traveling alone, and you answered, 'For now she ain't,'" Sophia recalled with a smile. "You were very presumptuous, Marshal Westfield." "Perhaps," he conceded, pressing a kiss to her temple, "but I was also right, wasn't I? You're not alone anymore. And you never will be again, not as long as I draw a breath." "Nor will you," she promised, nestling closer to his warmth. "We found each other at exactly the right moment, I think, both needing a new beginning." "Redemption springs," Isaac murmured. "It lives up to its name." As they drifted toward sleep in each other's arms, Sophia reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this place, and this man. The train conductor's innocent question and Isaac's unexpected answer had set in motion a sequence of events that transformed her life from one of constraint and disappointment to one of freedom and love. Spring arrived in Redemption Springs, bringing new growth to the land and to the town itself. Sophia and Isaac settled into married life with a natural ease that surprised them both. Their home in town served as a convenient base for Isaac's duties, while weekends often found them at the homestead, tending the expanding herb garden and enjoying the peace of the countryside. Sophia's remedies had gained a reputation beyond Redemption Springs, with people traveling from neighboring settlements to seek her healing knowledge. Isaac, now officially appointed sheriff following Davis's retirement, took pride in his wife's accomplishments, often bragging to visitors about her skills. On a warm May afternoon, as they sat on the porch of the homestead watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and crimson, Sophia turned to her husband with a smile that held a secret. "I have news," she said, taking his hand and placing it gently on her still flat stomach. "By Christmas, there will be 3 of us." The joy that transformed Isaac's face was worth all the morning sickness she had been quietly enduring for weeks. He gathered her in his arms, his kiss conveying what words could not: gratitude, love, and the promise of a future neither could have imagined when a train conductor asked a simple question and received an unexpected answer. "For now, she ain't alone," Isaac had said that day. And thanks to that moment of fate or providence, Sophia Holloway Westfield never would be alone again.